So this is the model class which we created. So you can see all these details like ID, name, and created date is there. We actually need to create a data source. So for now, we will just simply stay with in-memory related data. So I will just create a folder for data, and inside this, I will just feed up a class. So this is just the basic form. We will not interact with the DB or anything else, but we will just stick on with the data source from the code itself. So I have created the class data, and I will be just adding a new class inside this data folder just to provide only the relevant data. So you'll just simply click on the basic form for this project. I have added a data for my model class. So as you can see, by default, it is created with public class data for my model. So we will discuss public, protected, all the access modifiers very later. So right now, I actually need to create a data for my model. So this is my model. I will just add a single object over here. So you can see as my IntelliSense or the Visual Studio accepts all these kind of related things automatically. But I will stick on with creating my model. So the data for my model, by default, the IntelliSense is being created. But I actually want my model.ch because that is the model which I created for our data. Or the model is something like interaction for the CPA or the data which we'll be holding inside. Or simply, I will just copy the class name. And what I can do is like if I just simply press on tab, this IntelliSense will be automatically auto-populated. So I will just simply put on the tab and you can see the ID, name, created at everything is auto-populated. So ID is one, name is sample model created at daytime.utc now. So this is like by default a created date is assigned. So whenever the project runs, it will take what is the date time of that time at now. So we have just created a data source. So our application or our API will be just getting a data. So that is a simple application that we will be creating. So a simple data is created. At the next step, we actually need to get a call. So we have a data and we have to initiate a call to get this data. So what I will do is like, so by default, we interact through this controller, or the concept of controller is something like we have a UI or an application, and through this controllers, this API calls will be initiated, and then it will be just going to get the data or to interact with the data sources. Our data source is in memory itself. So I will just go and create a controller class. So we already have a inbuilt weather forecast controller class, which I will not be using because it just created within the template of this API controller. So now you can see my model controller.cs is created, but there is a difference I just actually wanted to show you. And this is a common mistake we always make. We are actually creating an API controller. So if you see, the weather forecast controller is actually being inherited from controller base class, but the one that I created is actually coming from a controller class. So that is the actual difference. So an API controller relies on controller base class, and a MVC controller or a model view controller actually inherits from controller class. Don't worry about inheritance and everything. We will later discuss these topics, but just understand my model and a colon controller, which means like it's just been inherited from this controller class. But as we are creating a web API controller, what we will do is like we will create another class. So I just created my model API controller, which inherits from controller base class. The steps are really simple. Just click on this controller folder and just click on add new item. Inside of the new item, select a web API empty controller class. So now we are just going to write a method to get the data or to fetch the data. So I hope everyone is aware about HTTP GET, put, post, and delete. So I will demo with an HTTP GET. So you can see data for my model. So this is the class which actually contains, or we can say this is the data source which actually provides data for our API call. So I will create an object of this class over my controller. I will keep on pressing the tab just to do it very easily. So you can see still I have some errors. So if I just hover around, I will just come to know this is actually happening because the reference for this thing is not added. So if we just add the using application demo.data, so this class is actually present over there. So we need to use that data class over this controller class. Then only we will be able to access this data for my model class here. Now you can see I'm writing an HTTP GET call. So everything like you can see like this auto populated one is actually coming from the Visual Studio IntelliSense. So I will simply go with the tab key so that I will have a outlined method for our simple API call. So here you can see our model class and our created object. Everything is just auto populated. So the same issue is with our model class as well. So the my model, we are not using the namespace of that one. So if we just add using application demo.models, we will be able to use its reference over our controller class as well. The other difference is this data. So you can see my model data is equal to new my model. I have not specified any of the access modifier. So just I will put the public one, and after that if we go back to our controller class we can see that's getting erased. So this is why these access modifiers are important. So wherever we create an object and if we want to access it, it's actually defined by the access modifiers. So there is a variety of access modifiers which we will discuss later, but just I will show you another access modifier, this protector, which actually limits the access. So upon changing there, you can see my data class is just getting restricted again. So for now, we will keep everything in public mode and we will continue our API call. So for now, our API call is ready, and the API calls always returns with OK or not found, everything like that. Right now, we will just simply retain an OK status. Now we will run the project. Now you can see a UI is created, but we have not created any of the UI in anywhere of our application, but this is actually coming from a Swagger. So this is something like which our program.cs class file is uh, included in, or a Swagger UI is already included in with this web API projects of our Visual Studio. So you can see our API, the get call of my model API is there. And if we enlarge it, we can see the try it out button or whatever the options is being there, like the media type, the status code, which will be returning. So you can see the OK, which we have just specified in our code is showing here. And this is the media type, which just deals with the data. So we'll just click on try it out and execute. So the call has happened to the Visual Studio and it has actually fetched our data from our data source. The data source means our in memory or the class file which we have kept the data. So you can see ID, name, created date, whatever things we have populated there, it has been actually fetched through this API call. So this is a very basic, simple or a sample web API project using Visual Studio. We will make it more complex on going forward, but for the basic understanding, we will just simply create the simple steps and the simple modules which we can be using here. This is the debugging window. And I just wanted to note to you one more thing. So you have seen an application demo.http file. So this is actually coming with the inbuilt Visual Studio. So what it actually does, it just acts like a, so suppose we are just using this API, we will not be having a UI, but the Swagger UI is actually coming. We are just using it in program.cs. But if we are not using it there, what we can actually do is we can just open this application demo.http. So you can see it's specified with port number 5147 as well. And this is the same which is hosted on the application HTTP host address as well. So if we send a request from here, we will be able to test all our APIs as well. So this is the weather forecasting one. But what we will do is like we will create our HTTP call as well. We will modify this file. So I will simply add the get call which has been created by us. So I will just simply put on tab and you can see the IntelliSense is providing the method name. So this is somewhere if we don't need to use this Swagger UI or anything, we can actually test all our API calls from here. So you can see the weather forecast one is by default coming, but we will populate with our my model API. The /5 which actually deals with the parameters which will be needed to test, which we will discuss very later. We will just simply go with the simple application now. So I will just run the application. I have actually started it without a debugging mode. Okay, so now you can see F4 not found exception is found. So this is actually happening because you have observed the API pattern, like the application demo underscore host address slash my model API. So is that the correct address that we need to pass? No, it is not, because if we just go for the root, we can see API slash controller is being specified. So this means like we need to provide slash API slash my model. Then only our particular root will be going to our own controller. So now you can see at 200 OK status is being get, and we can see our data which is being fetched from our data source. So this is all about for our basic web application, and on going forward, we will actually make the application more complex or more secured, reliable way. So this is the most basic thing that we can start off with, but on going forward, we will actually create an enterprise level application. Thank you. Thank you for watching.